Let's do it.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Marketer of the Day podcast. We are here with Chris Mercer, but you can call him by his nickname Mercer. He is from measurementmarketing.io, and he is a sought-after measurement marketing expert. And he and his team have been helping marketers, marketing teams, and agencies know, trust, and grow their numbers using tools like Google Tag Manager, Google Analytics, creating useful dashboards, and pulling actionable insights from what's being measured to begin forecasting and optimizing future results. Sounds amazing. Sounds exciting. Chris, glad to be talking to you.
Man, happy to be here. Appreciate you having me, Robert.
And I'm happy to have you. And so, I mean, you're the star of the show. You're the guest of honor, the man, the myth, the legend. So as far as where you want to go, what you want to talk about, what has you passionate, fired up the last 6 to 12 months? What's the latest scoop?
You know, this is definitely going to be self-serving, but it is measurement now more than ever. It really is. And it's because of things like iOS. It's things like what Safari's doing. It's things like what Google Chrome is doing, where as marketers, our job is to figure out kind of what our numbers are and what's working, what's not in our marketing messaging, and being able to adjust and grow those messages and everything else. And I think that the tendency has been in the past is that you rely on the tool to do the heavy lifting. You rely on the tool to do the work. So it was like, well, we got to learn analytics, because once we learn how to set goals in analytics, then everything magically will appear. Or, you got to learn this push button simple platform, because then all of a sudden magically things are going to appear. And that's just never really happened. And what's starting to really, really come to the forefront is this idea of, okay, forget about the tool. Like, yes, you're going to use analytics. Yes, you're going to use Tag Manager, Data Studio, or whatever else. You've got to understand measurement, and you've got to rethink the strategy from a company standpoint, from a brand standpoint, from a marketing team standpoint. You've got to rethink your strategy of how you measure to see what's working and what's not. That's what's got me most excited.
And so when you say like measurement, are you saying that like people maybe they like measure the wrong things and they look at like the wrong metrics, or like, so when you say we need to have better measurement, like what does it look like to not have it? What does it look like to have it?
It's a really great question. It's really a matter of where measurement is in the process. Typically, what's happened in the past is somebody will build a site, a sales funnel, a customer journey, whatever the thing is. Then they send a bunch of traffic, however they do that, through paid traffic, email, SEO, whatever. Then they bring in they bring in measurement, and they say, hey, measurement people, what happened to all that money? What happened to all that effort? What's going on? How are people using our site? How are people using the blog, right? All of those sort of questions. And of course, measurement answers with like, I don't know, we just found out you guys even wanted to know that stuff. So now we have to figure out how to measure for it. And measurement's always been an afterthought, because it's like, oh, we got to figure out if this ad spend is proving ROI or ROAS or whatever else, right? So what's starting to happen, this is sort of the before days. Now what's starting to happen is measurement is being thought of as, okay, you know what? This isn't just a project. It's not about setting up goals in Google Analytics or something like that. It's about having measurement not be such a project. It's more of a department in an organization, and that measurement is brought to the front of the table, meaning when we start planning our customer journeys, when we start planning the website, when we start planning the sections of whatever it is that we're building, measurement's brought to the table in that planning process. So now it's, okay, we're going to work with the marketing and the strategy team to figure out what the customer journey is going to look like. We're going to work with our dev team as far as the tech stack and how it's going to be put together. At the same time, measurements brought into the conversation to say, okay, how are we going to know that this website, that this customer journey is working in the way that it's supposed to be working? And all of that's happening now up front, or starting to, at least. That's the biggest trend that's starting to happen now, as opposed to kind of being an afterthought.
Interesting. Yeah. As opposed to like afterwards saying, okay, well, let's try to clean up this mess, or let's try to make sense of this. And so I don't know if you've noticed this, but I feel like it's way more common than it should be, as far as people not really knowing. They don't know their numbers to begin with, but they don't know like what are good numbers or bad numbers. And I'll hear things like, I sent 60 clicks to my website. Why didn't I get a conversion? I'm like, well, you got to do more than that. Or they'll say things like, well, I promoted a webinar to a list of 500 people. I only got 20 showing up. And I'm like, well, hey, like your number might be good based on the starting number, but it amazes me how little awareness there is on just what their even just simple numbers are, right? Like
Yeah.
simple conversion rate or time on a page or number of clicks, just like really simple stuff. And then I even find myself just really, it like hurts my brain. I feel like I'm like pushing through mud to even like think about a lot of these numbers and a lot of this like techie stuff. So have you noticed that, or can you kind of like speak to that, or like give us any advice about like, number one, like what kind of like numbers or what kind of things should we be paying attention to? And number two, how the heck can we get our heads wrapped around this and getting excited? Because like, even if someone comes in as a team, we still need to like deal with these issues. And sometimes it hurts the brain to think too much about math and numbers. So, I mean, what do you think about all that?
It's a really great question. So the way that I personally think about this is I think it's not so much that you don't know the numbers, because everyone has this innate sort of gut reaction of like, okay, I got to know my numbers. Everybody believes that. Then it's like, okay, well, what numbers are important? Or another way is asking this is saying, what questions are important for me to ask, right? So then what people do is they Google that, like, oh, I'm an e-commerce store, so what numbers should I be measuring? What are the 7 most important numbers? There's a million blog posts that will tell you 7 important numbers, and half of them agree and half of them don't. And you end up with thousands of different numbers, which means essentially it's meaningless, right? It's just too much. There's too many numbers out there. There's too many different ways of looking at stuff. And so what I personally recommend when we're working and training with our students is not to think about, okay, let's go find ROI or ROAS or whatever the latest blog post said that you're supposed to do. It's you think about it in a higher level strategy, right? Think about it in a framework and a strategy perspective. So you think about answering the questions: what results am I getting? How am I getting those results? That's all you got to know. That's it. It really is. Every question you ever ask will be one of those two. It's either what results am I getting or how am I getting results? So going back to your webinar example, it's okay, we had 500, we ended up with 20. Like, I don't think anything's working. It's like, well, let's go see if it is, right? Because that knowing what your results are is one thing. In other words, I got 20 sales. Okay, but how did I get those 20 sales? Was it because I had 500 registrants, 20 people showed up, 20 people saw the lander, and 20 people bought? Okay, well, in that case, that one part of the webinar works really, really well, but you have a problem with your show rate. Let's go focus on that. Was it 500 registered, 100 showed, and then 20 went to the page, and then all 20 bought? Okay, pretty good, but we got to get better at the pitch on the webinar to get more people to go to the page. Was it 500 registered, 200 showed, 100 went to the page, and only 20 bought, right? It's like, so when you understand not only what your results are, but how you're getting those results, that's where the secret sauce is, because that's how you understand your marketing machinery and how it works. And this kind of goes back to that when we talk about strategy and framework, the biggest tip, if somebody wanted to say, okay, if there's one belief that I would need to adjust or adopt to really skyrocket what the results are that I'm getting from my marketing in general, is stop asking the question, what happened? Which is what everybody does, which I get. I did the same thing when I first started out. I was like, oh, what happened to all that money I spent? What happened to all those emails I sent? What happened to the SEO stuff that we're doing? What happened to all the people coming in from organic or whatever the thing is you're looking for? Instead, you go, here's what's supposed to happen. Did that happen? So instead of going, okay, what happened with the webinar, which is where everybody starts, you go, the new way of doing it is you start thinking, okay, here's how the webinar was supposed to work. I was supposed to have a 30% registration rate. Of the people that registered, I was supposed to have between 25 and 30% show up. Of those people who showed up, 15 or 20% were supposed to go to the sales page. Of those people who went to the sales page, half of them were supposed to go to the cart. And of the people who went to the cart, half of them should buy for this amount, therefore generating this much revenue. And you measure for all that. And then you go back to your webinar and you say, okay, not only what results did we get, we'll know how we got the results. And we're basically answering the question, did this thing work like it was supposed to, like it was intended to, like we planned for it to? And then what will happen is when you're measuring like that, there's no drama. You don't have to think about, oh, was the headline off? Was the webinar off? Was the pitch off? Was the sales off? Whatever. You don't have any of that drama, because you're going to see in the numbers that it was either worked perfectly, in which case the answer is get more webinar people and start scaling that webinar traffic, or it'll say, hey, they showed up, they went to the page, just didn't go to the cart. You're like, okay, we lost them somewhere in the offer. The offer's the problem. And that's where you focus. So and that's what I love about numbers in general, is because when you measure for it, you're literally asking the market for their side of a conversation, right? And you're saying, hey, what do you think about this? And they will tell you. They will never lie, and they will never be coy, and it'll never be a gray area answer. It'll be a black or white, yes or no, thumbs up, thumbs down type of answer. It's very binary. And so when you go to them, if you're not sure how the market's responding, it's because you're not asking the right question. So you just ask a more specific question. The answer could say, yeah, I showed up for the webinar, which means I was interested in your content, but I didn't go to your sales page, which means I didn't really care that much about what you were pitching. So we have to figure out, okay, in the webinar, we got to maybe change the problem that we're focusing on a little bit, or change the solution and pitch it a different way. But it's on the webinar. It's not on the sales page, because who cares? I'm not even seeing that. So if that makes sense. But that's the idea, is you got to know what your results are. You got to know how you're getting the results, and measurement helps you, and of course the free tools like analytics and everything else out there will help you to do that.
And I mean, yeah, I mean, there's like 20 things right in there just to think about and unpack. And like when you were explaining that, what was going through my imagination were like lots of like boxes connected by lines, and just seeing like, okay, like here's the sales letter, here's the webinar, here's the follow-up, here's the the email sequence, here's the abandoned cart, or whatever you end up drawing in. And I think you're tapping into something where like so sometimes the numbers can become exciting, and like numbers in any sense. Like sometimes, like if your accountant like takes your income and like does this and like minimizes that and puts it in that bucket. Sometimes by like turning the numbers into like a fun, almost like piece of artwork or like a diagram, it kind of makes it come alive, and you like transform it into something else. And so it's like the way you were explaining there, you're like, well, there's like the wrong way to do it and the right way to do it, right? And the right way is the way you were just explaining, but like the wrong way is kind of it's like negative, it's kind of all or nothing. It's like, okay, everything was great, but this 1 week link and it's all over with, it's all gone for. And I like your strategy where you say, well, here's what we're expecting, here's the plan. And then you just compare the plan with reality, and then you can look at, okay, like where's the weak point based on that? But instead of saying it all sucked or second guessing, you're saying, well, all this matches up except for this one piece. Now here's the one piece to fix. And then, like I said, try again. And then if it does well, or does as expected, then you pour more gasoline on the fire, repeat the process. So that's a much more sort of logical way of thinking about it. And so to help us understand all this, like I'm sure you have some really crazy or fun before and after kind of stories, right? Some case studies, success stories. There's like a million words for it of where you jumped in and like worked your magic in some of this, because it's all good to talk about, tools and like what ifs and scenarios, but what if like about something like really fun that happened? So do any fun stories like that come to mind?
Yeah, I'll give you two. From first party examples. This is with our own products. So our flagship product is called the Measurement Marketing Academy. And it's where our training program is, right? People can buy that membership and learn how to use all the stuff and think about this and use the tools, et cetera. So we have the Measurement Marketing Academy. We have a sales page, we have an offer page, and we have a certain expectation. We have our forecasts of how the funnel, the customer journey for the Academy is supposed to work. So in our case, it's of the people that come and see the offer page, 8 to 12% will go to the cart page. Of the people who go to the cart page, say 40 to 45% will complete the cart at a certain ticket amount, and then that creates the revenue. So we know what the results are that we're expecting. We know how we're supposed to get those results. And to your point, it's funny you mentioned like the kind of flowcharty like example of like block and then the arrow and then a block. That's exactly what our reports look like. We use Data Studio to do that. So we have a nice little flowchart example that shows the journey and what the conversion rates are in between. So we made some adjustments to the page. Our team made some adjustments to the page. We give it a couple of days. This is what's the kind of the beauty of this. Wasn't like 6 months later ready to figure this out. It was a couple of days. We look at the reports and we start to see this weird thing of the numbers where instead of hitting 8 to 12, because remember, we're going to the report not saying what happened yesterday. We're going to the report saying, did what happened? We have a plan of what was supposed to happen a week ahead of time. Is that happening, right? Is this thing working like it's supposed to? So we're looking for 8 to 12% to go from the offer to the cart. We ended up having something like 30 or 40%. It is absolutely true that a conversion rate can be too good, right? So that smells weird where you're like, okay, wait a second. We wanted 8 to 12. Way too many people are going to the cart. Let's go to the cart and see how many people are moving from the cart to the next step, in this case, purchasing. It turns out like 10 or 15% are way lower. So we're like, okay, what would cause somebody, because that's what I'm hearing the story is, if I get kind of I always imagine myself having a conversation with the market, with the users, right? And so what the users are telling me is, we went to the cart, not necessarily with the intention of buying. We went to the cart to find out something that we had a question on. That's why they went. They didn't go to buy because the abandonment rate's way too high. So that's just abnormal. So we go to our page and we go with that intention of, okay, why, if we looked at our offer page, what would cause us to go to the cart and then not to buy from the cart? We look at the page, we're going through, forgot to put the price. Super easy mistake. Would never have noticed it really because it went through QA. It's just that sometimes you get blind to it. A million people see it a million times and the price fell off one of the designs and nobody saw it. But that's what was happening. People weren't going to the cart to buy it. They were going to the cart to figure out how much it was. And then they were going back to the sales page, which we could measure. We could see that. And we saw, okay, they actually are going to the cart. And then they're going back to the sales page, which is friction. That's a lot of friction. I'm forcing them to click to the cart. I'm forcing them to go back and hit the sales page again, and then scroll back to where they were and try to figure out if it's worth. And that's exactly what the issue was. We go back, we add the price, everything comes back to normal. Within the day, everything came back to normal, 8 to 12%. 35 to 40%, everything starts working as expected. The other example I have is a webinar example. You mentioned webinars before. We did a webinar where we had a product, we had a whole live training that we were doing, and it was separate. It was the first time we did this. Probably going to be the last time we did this based on this advice, but we had set up this training product where it was like parts of the academy, and we were going to help them train to build a very specific report. And it was this little live training. I made this webinar, and the webinar was amazing. We had like almost 1,000 people register for the webinar. We had hundreds and hundreds show rate was perfect. Lots of people seeing the sales page. Went to the offer itself, didn't move forward. So didn't even really go to the cart. People went to the cart completed, but it was getting people to the cart. So what does that tell us? We had lots of people registered. We had lots of people show. We had lots of people stay through the webinar, because we measured for that too. We had lots of people even look at the offer, but they just really didn't go to the cart, which says to us, measuring for that, says they were not into the offer. They loved everything we talked about except for our solution. So then we went back and we said, okay, we're going to have to do basically the same style webinar, only this time we offer a different product. We offer a different solution, which we did. Completely different results. We ended up doing almost 400% improvement because we switched the offer. The only reason we knew to switch the offer, because we could have said, oh, well, the webinar is wrong, or the registration was wrong, or whatever. But we knew it was this piece that needed to be fixed, because that's what they told us. It wasn't our opinion. It was the market saying, hey, I'm with you, except I don't like that. If you just fix this part, we'll totally move forward. As long as you match my expectation here. And we did. We changed it, got a big giant result. We're like, okay, cool. Now we've got something we can scale out. But again, that wasn't our idea. It's not because we were brilliant marketers. It's because we listened to the market. And the way that we listen is through measurement.
So this is making a lot of sense as far as you kind of like asking the right questions, like you said early on, and kind of like following through the path, because there seems to be a lot of like the gimmickiness of it, yes, right? Someone says like, well, if you look at my swipe file, and if I put an orange border around this button, it'll convert at 54%. And there's just a lot of like really like super fundamental things like that it took me so many years to figure out. Like you mentioned about like putting the price on or near the button. I used to think that was great if someone clicked into the cart, because I'd be like, great, now I can do a retargeting or an abandoned cart. But then it's like, yeah, but if they're clicking and they're going back, and that's not good. And like little things like having it where like if they click on a button on a page, it like drops them down to the order area instead of going right to the cart. So like 100% sure what they're looking at. And yeah, so it's like, that's kind of the counter to a lot of like the bros. I don't know what else to call them, but like the conversion bros, webinar bros that say, well, hey, if you have to do a webinar that's 34 minutes long. And it's like, but you're looking through a peephole. You're looking at just like this one metric, and who knows what the rest of the
one weird trick thing, right? It's like, oh, do this one weird trick, and all of a sudden your conversions will be 3 times. It's not how people operate. It's not how behaviors are. Like you and I could venture to say, like, whatever opt-in rates you're running, if you're doing cold traffic, it's probably somewhere between 25 and 35% ish, somewhere around there with cold traffic. If it's warm traffic, you might be 45 to 55% on some opt-ins, sometimes higher if it's like an affiliate or something, or your own list that you're mailing for. I know that's what it's going to be for you last year. I know that's going to be for you this year. I know that's probably what it's going to be for you next year, because that's how humans are. Okay. And because that's how behaviors flow. And there's a beauty to that. I'm never going to get 100% opt-in rate. Never. Right. And if I did, it's because I sacrificed someplace else, meaning I talked to the 3 people who were going to opt in, and they all opted in, but it doesn't scale. At scale, you start seeing patterns and trends. It's the law of large numbers. And it's amazing because you can rely on that like a concrete floor. Like, it is solid. It doesn't go anywhere. And you know it's going to be there years from now. So you can build a company based on that. But you've got to measure for the behaviors, so you know exactly what's working and what's not as you go along the way. But to your point, that's what it is. All you're doing is you're measuring for the customer journey, and then did they provide the behaviors that would sort of allow you to infer that they're with you in that conversation still, right? So as an example, like when we do our marketing, you'll send me, when we finish this out, you'll produce it. You'll send me a link that says, hey, this is up now. We're sharing it with our audience. I will send traffic to this, right? So what we call offsite brand aware. So I will send traffic from all of our paid platforms and resources. We will send traffic to your site. That is to, yes, of course, promote you, but also obviously secondarily to promote us, right? So we're going to borrow off your brand. We're off-site brand aware. So they are aware kind of the measurementmarketing.io brand, but it's not on our site. That puts them into a retargeting audience. Anybody that interacts with that ad then goes into a retargeting audience whose job it is, now the ad is, get them on-site brand aware, which means, okay, a certain amount of those people, we're going to come to measurementmarketing.io, and I want them there at least 10 seconds on the page so they're aware of the measurementmarketing.io brand. And then if they, haven't become a free toolbox member or a measurementmarketing.io Measurement Marketing Academy member or anything like that, then they go into other campaigns whose job it is to then continue the journey. Say, well, you're aware of measurementmarketing.io. You've maybe seen the blog post. Let's continue the journey. Maybe you become a free member. Maybe you become a Measurement Marketing Academy member. And then the retargeting kind of works from there. But we're having a conversation as we journey from offsite, I've never heard of measurementmarketing.io, to, okay, now I'm familiar with the actual website. I've put it in my browser window. I've seen the pages. I've explored the blog. I'm into this stuff. Yes, I'm becoming a toolbox member. Okay, I'll do an Academy member. And now, I'll bring in other people, and so, but we measure for that journey as we go.
And this is so cool to think about. And it's really clicking with me as far as like you're saying, like, almost like don't let the technology take over, right? Like the technology is a tool. And even like the way that I'm kind of understanding your thought process, it's like decoding and encoding, right? Like the decoding is you're looking at all this data, you're looking at the customer journey, you're saying like not what went wrong, but what happened, and then seeing like where's the weak point. And then as far as like the encoding, kind of the reverse of that, as you're saying, well, here are these marketing principles, right? There's like the stages of awareness. And so if someone clicks over from your podcast to measurementmarketing.io, and if they stay on the page for a longer time, you market to them in this way. Or if they sign up for this free thing, you market to them in that way. And so it kind of lets us have our cake and eat it too, have the best of both worlds, and to kind of think more about the big picture and the strategy, not just the nearsighted, let me just increase this one conversion rate. You're like, you have a whole spiral of a whole system that all works together. So this is blowing my mind. This sounds amazing. And so people say, okay, like, I know that maybe what I'm doing or what I want to do is on the right track as far as having like the reports or the dashboards or the different kind of funnels or customer journeys. And if I want to take things to the next level here, if I say, well, listening to one podcast interview has whet my appetite, but it's not enough. Now, where do I go? How do I find out about Chris and his team? How do I find out about measurement marketing, next steps, whatever that free tool was? What's the next step here?
Absolutely. Well, of course, measurementmarketing.io is our site, so you're more than welcome to go there and check it out and see what we've got. But we do have a free Toolbox membership. So that is where we have weekly trainings that are there for free for the Toolbox members. And we also have a bunch of different measurement marketing tools that we give our members as well. Again, completely free, including things like how to track your traffic properly and how to actually set up goals. Not just how to set them up in Google Analytics, but like what a goal should even be and what do you do with it? Right? Like that sort of stuff. So we'll have all of that back there for what we call our Toolbox members. If you go to measurementmarketing.io/MOTD, marketer of the day. So measurementmarketing.io/MOTD, it'll take you right to that Toolbox offer. It's just a name and email, and then you can go ahead and set up your free account at that point.
Fantastic. And that is exactly on brand, right? If you're a Google Tag Manager person, a Google Analytics person, you better as heck have a custom landing page or a custom tracking link. Otherwise, what are you doing with your life? So we said measurementmarketing.io/MOTD. Go there right now. Run, don't walk. Any final parting words of advice here, Chris? I know that like what's sticking out for me is that whole idea of like ask the right questions and don't just go and figure out what to do. Like figure out, okay, what question am I asking? Why am I asking it? But does anything jump out for you as far as something we all really need to sit up and pay attention to as far as conversion, measurement, all this good stuff?
I would really focus on the basics. This is always easier than you think it is. It is super easy to get confused by the tools though, because tools like analytics and tag manager or whatever the systems are that people are using to measure, there's a lot to it because measurement can be complicated. It just is. But the strategy that you use is what saves you. It's how you think about measurement that saves you. It's not the tool that saves you. People think Google Analytics is going to save them once they start using it, but it's not. It's how you think about measurement and then use that tool in that way that saves you, right? Just like using a hammer does not make you build a house. It's knowing carpentry that helps you to build the house, right? And do framing and everything else. Like that's the idea. You've got to understand the strategy of measurement. That is so much more important than knowing the tools. Obviously, once you understand the strategy, you will want to learn the tools, but then the tools make so much more sense because you've got a better strategy for it.
Powerful. I love it. Measurement marketing, or let me get this right. measurementmarketing.io/MOTD, and we'll see you there.